Welcome to the Asheville City Council meeting. If you'll just take one moment to silence your cell phones. And also, if you want to speak at this evening's meeting, we have someone out in the hall who will take your name and sign you up, and then you'll be added to the list I see on my screen. So if at any time during the meeting you realize you haven't signed up and you want to, just go on out in the hall and sign up, and it'll show up on our list of speakers. We have two council members absent up here, although Sage Turner is actually on the phone, and I'm looking at a high-tech speakerphone there connected to that microphone. So she is in attendance by phone. And with that, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin our agenda this evening, I just wanted to remember someone who just passed away, a volunteer civil servant, Guillermo Rodriguez, who was a member of our community for a long time. I just want to list for you the city's committees that he volunteered his time to. The Haywood Page Community Advisory Committee, the Haywood Page Vision Implementation Committee, Planning and Zoning Commission, the Public Art and Cultural Commission. He served as the Public Art and Cultural Commission's representative to the Broadway Cultural Gateway Study. He was a member of the Downtown Commission, Downtown Public Space Management Committee, the Open Space Task Force, the Landscaping Standards Subcommittee. He was also on the Bell Share Board and the Tree Commission. And he passed away this last week after having just resigned due to his illness from the Downtown Commission. So we posthumously thank Guillermo Rodriguez for all his service to the committee, to many committees, and to our city. So thank you for that moment. Tonight we have two proclamations. The first proclamation is Black History and Legacy Month, and my notes say that we have Andrea Clark and Dr. Joseph Fox here, and I see Dr. Fox, but Andrea Clark, I'm not sure. Okay, all right, well, if there's anyone here for that item, please meet me up here at the lectern. Okay. This is on? All right, here, I'll just stand up here. All right, I'm going to read this proclamation, then whereas the month of February is nationally designated as Black History Month, and whereas Black History Month is a time of acknowledgement and celebration for all Americans to honor and recognize those who have advanced the causes of civil rights, human rights, strengthened our nation, our communities, our families, and who were instrumental in building a legacy of excellence for which we are inspired, along with building a nation of freedom and equality for all people. And whereas in Black History Month, we as citizens, community, and a nation acknowledge the historically painful past of chattel slavery, Jim Crow, and the atrocities taken against African Americans, the lives lost, the harms committed, and the present-day ramifications that are still impacting our African American communities, for which we as a city are committed to addressing through our reparations efforts, policies, practices, and visioning to make Asheville a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive community. Whereas during Black History Month, all Americans are encouraged to reflect on and honor the journey of African Americans, the rich ancestral heritage, the resilience, the sacrifices, the courage, and the enduring legacy of invaluable contributions, including, but not limited to, medicine, science, architecture, education, government, engineering, the arts, leadership, and social justice, including our local heroes and heroines of Asheville. And whereas in acknowledging African Americans and celebrating Black History Month, we do so collectively as citizens, as a community and a country, with appreciation and gratitude. Gratitude for the remarkable strength, commitment, and resolve of the human spirit of African Americans to yearn for, create and experience one of the greatest freedoms allotted to all persons of the human race, the autonomy of being recognized, valued, and dignified as a human being, for all persons are created equally. And whereas in honoring the immeasurable benefactions of African Americans locally in our society and the globe, all Americans are encouraged to reflect on the past successes and challenges of African Americans, be inspired by these achievements such that every citizen continues to improve our society so that we live up to and embody the ideals and virtues of freedom, equality, and justice for all people of the human race. And now, therefore, I, Esther Manheimer, Mayor of the City of Asheville, do hereby proclaim February 2023 as Black History and Legacy Month in Asheville and encourage all citizens in Asheville to recognize the importance of Black History and Legacy Month in our lives and heritage, and to join in this annual celebration in remembrance and recognition of the ongoing contributions and achievements of African Americans.
Thank you. And on behalf of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Asheville and Buncombe County, we want to thank you for your continued support. And we do want to recognize a COPE program that we're having on February 25th. It's the John Lewis Awards, where we will be recognizing and honoring male community leaders in Asheville and Buncombe County. And that time and place will be announced on the website.
Thank you. Okay, we have a second proclamation that Councilwoman Maggie Ullman is going to read. Rosa Parks Transit Equity Day, and I have here that Jan Whiteman and Kathy Woods might be here, or anyone else who's here for this proclamation. Please come forward.
It should be on. So, whereas Rosa Parks was an iconic figure in the movements for social justice and racial equality and played a major role in the inception of the civil rights movement that ended legal segregation in the United States. And whereas the immediate focus of the Rosa Parks historic protest was the unequal access of African Americans to public transit. And whereas unequal access to public transit based on race, income, disability have persisted to this day, and have to a degree become worse with cuts in public funding for transit and consequent fare increases in many transit systems. And whereas humanity is faced with a growing crisis of climate change, with record-breaking temperatures, with consequences including sea level rise, prolonged drought, more frequent wildfires, more severe storms and flooding, and spread of diseases. And whereas the effects of climate change disproportionately hurt workers, people of color, and poor people, and constitute a civil rights crisis of our time, as seen so vividly in many areas of our United States and world. And it is essential to drastically cut emissions of greenhouse gases and convert our economy to renewable, non-emitting energy sources. And whereas the required expansion of public transit to address the climate crisis provides an unprecedented opportunity to continue the tradition of Rosa Parks and the civil rights movement by ensuring the transit systems are affordable and accessible, and that people of color, economically disadvantaged people, people with disabilities, and other marginalized populations have full access to the benefits of public transit. And whereas the required expansion of public transit to address the climate crisis also provides an unprecedented opportunity to create more good, high-skilled, family-supported transit operation jobs, as well as construction jobs for building new transit facilities. And whereas the growth of public transit will also reduce automotive pollutants such as nitrogen oxides and particulate matter and have the worst impacts on the communities closest to highways and other major roads, which tend to be disproportionately communities of color and economically disadvantaged communities. And whereas affordable, reliable transit is an essential public service on par with utilities such as water and electricity. And now, therefore, Esther Mannheimer, our mayor of the city of Asheville, declares February 4th, 2023 as Rosa Parks Transit Equity Day.
Thank you very much for that honor, and thank you, Betty Thompson, who was instrumental in doing this for our Grace Circle of Skyland United Methodist Church.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the consent agenda. First, item G, which is the item concerning buses, actually bus purchases, is going to be moved to February 14th. And then item E, we will pull off and discuss separately. So do I have a motion to adopt items A, B, C, D, and F of the consent agenda?
So moved. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I do have some folks signed up to speak on the consent agenda. The first, so for folks who are going to speak, at this point, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The lights on the lectern will light up. Green means go. Orange means you're getting close to stopping, and red means stop, and you'll hear a buzzer. So the first person signed up to speak is Tiffany Davis. What is this? Tiffany? Okay.
Actually,
Yes.
I think that's her name.
Oh, did you hear Tiffany Davis? Oh, sorry.
But I also think they wanted to speak on fuses.
That's okay. We can.
Hello, my name is Tiffany Davis. I live in Hillcrest Apartments. My concern really was more police present when the children are getting on and off those school buses, and just a little more patrolling over there in our community, because there's been a lot of shootings, people shooting inside occupied apartments and vehicles. But I can say since we met, they have showed up. But we need a little more security over there. And we have a lot of cameras. And it seemed like when something happened in our community, they never know what happened. I want to know why the cameras are there. Who are they for? Because my house got shot up and I haven't heard anything. And my cars too. So it's kind of uncomfortable over there right now. And it don't feel like a safe place. But I do thank Asheville Police for being there, because they have been there lately. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so I'm going to take all the public comment under our consent agenda, although the camera item is, we're going to do separately, but because of our funny way of signing up. So feel free, of course, to speak about it. David Nash is the next person signed up to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. David Nash, Asheville Housing Authority. I'm here to back up the voices of our residents. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago. I want to thank the city manager, Councilwoman Mosley, Chief of Police, and some of his lieutenants for being there. The important thing from our perspective, in addition to ongoing camera surveillance when there's an issue going on, we think that's very important. We think that police presence is very important, and we want to begin to make sure that the voices of our residents are being heard instead of just statements in the community that our properties are over-policed. I think they are, in fact, under-policed in some ways. because they are places where people feel safe to go and use their weapons to shoot other people, usually not our residents and either the perpetrators or the victims, but it creates a major safety issue for our residents. So thank you to the Chief of Police and to the City Manager for the additional coverage. The residents in that meeting specifically asked for police presence when kids are getting on and off the bus, and police presence late at night on the weekends after bars and clubs close, because that's a time when people tend to gather, particularly in the warmer months. And they're not asking for rough and tumble police activities. They're not asking for a lot of taillight enforcement or misdemeanors. They're just asking for a safe police presence to deter that kind of activity. So thanks again. Look forward to ongoing discussions about reinventing public safety in our communities.
Thank you. Jonathan Wainscott?
Hi, my name is Jonathan Wainscott. I know the issue has been pulled on the buses this evening. I think it's an interesting confluence with the social justice and transit that we were just discussing. It's come to my attention recently that the electric buses that we may crave here in the city comes with a very high slavery fingerprint. And what I'm talking about is the mining and extraction of the minerals necessary for lithium-ion batteries and all of this, the minerals that are needed for this production is coming out of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And it's a tremendous rape of that country's resources and people. In order to get the cobalt necessary to make these batteries, there are strip mines that are essentially pits filled with tens of thousands of human beings, men essentially, breaking the earth with hammers. They don't even have backhoes to make this happen. Women and children then sift through piles of debris in industrial mines, breathing in toxic fumes without a mask at all to bring this so that we here can use cell phones, earbuds, laptops, electric vehicles. The bigger the battery, the more slavery there is in it. The bigger the vehicle, the bigger the battery. So I just would like you to consider this, as I know that there's some consternation perhaps about the use of old-fashioned diesel buses, but that might be a better way to go. You know, I mean, we could probably even make them eco-friendly by making them peanut-powered and get some Jimmy Carter peanuts and use some George Washington Carver peanut science and make them biodiesel and do it right by the world here in Asheville as we think globally and act locally. So keep that in mind as this comes up on the next agenda. Thank you.
The next person signed up to speak is Nina Tovish.
I was hoping to address item E.
We're taking all the public comment now, but Maggie, I think you've got to reset the.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Manheimer. Please excuse any awkwardness with my speech. I had a dental experience today and I'm half numb.
You look better than you think.
So I'm here to let you know about my experience with an introduction to the camera system that is proposed to be a joint effort between the city and the county. I was fortunate enough on a visit to the county courthouse to come across Sheriff Miller, and he invited me up to see the coordination center for this network of cameras that are already in place on the county level, including public schools, private businesses, and other locations around the county. And it's a very impressive system. In that conversation, Sheriff Miller assured me that the package that's available through FISA of facial recognition would not be used, and there were other capabilities of the system that they didn't anticipate bringing online. However, I feel that the implementation of a network of this sort, extending into City of Asheville properties and cameras all around the city, needs more public input. It needs public discussion of how and when it will be used. Just because someone tells you one time that a package will not be implemented doesn't mean that there might not be a change of personnel at the top and a decision made differently later. I think we need in place some guidelines that the public understands about how this system is going to be used, what it will be used for, who will participate in it, who will benefit from it, how it will help our city, and an opportunity to hear from those who feel that potentially they might be harmed by it. There is an understandable concern about a surveillance state. Can it help reduce crime, or at least bring perpetrators to justice? Maybe so. Can it also be used in ways that are harmful to our civic fabric? Yes, possibly also. I think before you make a decision about this item, we need to have a broader discussion in our community about how it will be implemented, what guidelines will be put in place, what kind of review there will be of the way that it's used. It's a warrantless system. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. And the last person signed to speak under the consent agenda is Grace Barron Martinez.
Good evening. The FUSA system is the latest in a push to increase surveillance on private citizens and gives police real-time access to a network of both private and public cameras located throughout the city. It is able to use artificial intelligence technology for object identification. I don't know about you, but I'm certainly not a subject matter expert on AI, and I feel that with this, we are opening a Pandora's box that we will not be able to reel back in, and so it is essential that we place policy before implementation. I brought you all a copy of a draft ordinance courtesy of our friends at the ACLU that aptly points out the key areas that should be addressed with a major change like this in our community. This software has the potential to violate our First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment rights. As we know, City of Asheville, Parks and Rec, and Asheville Police received a letter just last week about violating demonstrators' First Amendment rights when they were extrajudicially banned from all city parks. They also conducted intense surveillance on mutual aid volunteers. A policy like this would enhance our risk mitigation for future violations of constitutional rights. It includes things such as a surveillance use policy, something that was mentioned to exist but was not provided in any documents for these meetings, which would cover authorized uses like prohibiting warrantless surveillance of public gatherings, data collection, data protection, data retention, and as well as how this data could be shared. It would also put in place auditing and oversight with public inclusion and a mechanism for complaints. This ordinance also includes enforcement mechanisms for potential violations and whistleblower protections. We do not want to be like the police, shooting first and asking questions later. When Columbia, Missouri City Council considered FUSIS implementation, they brought discussion to the full council for public hearing and actually had a FUSIS representative present to answer questions. Here we haven't been given so much as a presentation and have more information about how we're going to address feeding bears at today's Environment and Safety Committee meeting than we were given about this invasive surveillance software. I have attempted to comment at today's committee meeting and was prevented from doing so, which gives an appearance of suppression of dissenting voices. This item was only made public knowledge after release of the agenda on Friday and was put on the consent agenda before even making it through committee. We have already seen how previous surveillance technologies have played out after implementation. I would point you to body cameras, which were sold to us as a mechanism for police accountability, yet somehow as police gassed and shot at us with pepper balls in the summer of 2020, their cameras were turned off. We saw this again just last week when police murdered a forest defender in Atlanta, where they have implemented FUSIS and where it is funded by the Atlanta Police Foundation, whose corporate-backed board is funding Cop City. My privacy rights are already being violated as I am constantly being monitored by a drone without a warrant while I peacefully gather in support of my community. Finally, we must center equity in everything we do in our city, and I continue to be disturbed by our well-documented racial disparities in policing. I have no reason to believe that this new system will continue to perpetuate disparate harm on communities of color as well as for poor and low-wage people. It is important to note that there is no data to suggest that this system results in crime reduction, even from FUSIS themselves. I implore you to vote no on this item, implement the Community Control over Police Surveillance Bill, and revisit this under the guidelines at a later date with a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, we have a motion and a second for everything on the consent agenda except item E and G. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. On item E is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an interlocal agreement with the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office for the use of the FUSIS real-time criminal intelligence camera system. Do I have a motion to approve that item and a second, and then we'll hear from, we have folks from the Sheriff's Office here and our Assistant City Manager to speak about it. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All right, I think, Ben, did you want to start with this item? So our Assistant City Manager, Ben Woody, will speak a little bit about this item, and then our folks from the Sheriff's Department who are hiding in the back can come forward to these seats up front to be able to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Ben Woody, Assistant City Manager. I'm going to take just a few minutes to review the item that's before you tonight. And as the Mayor mentioned, we have two representatives from the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office that may be able to answer questions that are more specific towards the FUSIS program. FUSIS is a system of real-time surveillance cameras. It is a system that is operated and maintained by the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. What this interlocal agreement does is it would provide permission for the city manager to move forward and enter into that agreement with the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. And so the agreement really does two things. Number one, it provides a mechanism by which the Sheriff's Office can request permission to put cameras on city property. So again, this would detail how that would happen, how it would occur. The installation of those cameras on city property would require the approval of the city manager's office, as well as, of course, the request would have to come from the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. The other thing that this agreement does, this interlocal agreement, is it provides limited access for the Asheville Police Department to the FUSIS system. So the Asheville Police Department would have access to FUSIS, to that network. That access would exist underneath the already in place policies that the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office has put forward. So in terms of the Sheriff's Office and the policies they have that dictate the use, the operation, the auditing, the reporting, how the data is managed, all that's maintained by the Sheriff's Office. And of course, the city of Asheville's access to that system would be subject to those policies that are in place. Last piece on this is the agreement is annual in nature, so it does, the access for the city requires a $30,000 payment to the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. That'll be spelled out in the local agreement. And again, the agreement can be canceled with 30 days written notice by either party, but it is an annual agreement in duration. And with that, I can answer any questions that council has about the details of the interlocal agreement.
After watching today's new Environment and Safety Committee, I requested 3 things for the full council. One is the full interlocal agreement, which thank you for sending that to us. We got it at 3:35 today. So that's a really tight turnaround. Our internal policy for accessing FUSIS footage was my second question. If we don't have a policy for how we're going to access it, what are our internal checks and balances to ensure quality, equitable service outcomes when staff are using this equipment?
Our access, APD's access will be through the FUSIS system coordinator. So our ability to enter that system will be through a request made to that coordinator at the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office.
So we don't have a policy or procedure about what would initiate a request?
Our level of access would be the similar or the same as the Buncombe County's in terms of an internal process. So are you asking how would, for example, an employee of APD initiate a request to review footage? Is that the question?
Yes, I know that there's, for example, been some windows that have been broken downtown. Like, how would we,
Yeah.
I don't know a better word to use than say, what would trigger a request for review of fuseless
Yeah,
footage?
I'm not able to answer that right now. I mean, that would be a policy that the APD would put together. And again, that request would then go to the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office.
I appreciate the
request
not knowing.
access.
And the
Jump in
third
though,
one?
that in the so my understanding is that in order to get access to this tool, the sheriff's department has a bunch of policies and protocols, and they do spell out in their policies and protocols that information, which.
What the circumstances must be.
Yeah, like,
Right.
So there is guiding language that we are assumed to have to follow in order to access this tool that the sheriff's department maintains, that.
I did
Correct.
read that,
This
and I'm hearing we also don't have an internal policy.
I mean, if the APD initiated a request to view footage, for example, again, it would have to be consistent with the policy that Buncombe County has in place. So yes, that does, it has rank requirements of the officials that are requesting access to the data. It has information about how and when that can occur.
Okay. And the third one was if fuseless footage can or can't be made public due to state legislation. So I know there are some limitations, for example, around body camera footage being restricted, what policies are in place for our staff, electeds, or the public to view. I did get a partial answer this afternoon from the city's attorney's office regarding North Carolina General Statute 132-1.4. Brad, maybe you can speak a little bit to that?
Absolutely, Council Member Roney. The state law around what the state statutes refer to as recordings, law enforcement recordings, makes no distinction in this capacity between the kind of footage that would be gained through FUSIS and what we'll commonly call body cam footage. All of that is lumped together in the same category. It is specifically excluded as a public record and placed under a different protocol, generally what I will call law enforcement information. There is a process by which someone can, under certain circumstances, request to either be able to view or to have that information disclosed to them, but it is a separate process from public records. Otherwise, it is restricted from public view, just like body cam footage would be.
And I think that's the similar concern that was brought up in Durham. And so I'm watching to see what North Carolina is going to do about the fact that if we do record incidences of interactions with the public, but we can't access the footage, then what benefit is it in addition to surveillance? Now, I have toured the FUSIS system with the sheriff when they were first installing it. I have followed up with a second request. So we're scheduling a second one now with the sheriff's office. But I was under the impression that the sheriff would be at our Environment and Safety Committee because it was on the agenda. And I think a lot of the calls I might be getting asking for more questions and more conversation, more time. Is it possible to bring this back to Environment and Safety? Because I think if we're going to look at accountability and access point policy, that's going to be important when we're using and safeguarding public data.
And Councilwoman Roney, we have a couple folks from the sheriff's office here. If there are questions that they might be able to answer, and I don't know which one of you or both of you, if you want to be able to provide information. I'm not sure if I think everybody up here has had a chance to visit with the sheriff and see the system, and I know our city manager has more than once viewed the system. And just for clarification, the sheriff's office is already operating this program. There are cameras in schools we've heard about. There's cameras in public housing. There are cameras in lots of places already. All of our community that sheriff's office is able to see. This would just allow for the placement of cameras on city-owned, 3 cameras contemplated right now on city-owned property. I believe this building is one of them. And allowing it to connect to the FUSIS system that the sheriff's office is working with. In addition to that, you have a whole bunch of folks in the community that have their own private cameras that have opted in to allow the FUSIS system to view them. And that's a private property owner's decision whether or not they want to do that. That's something that they've decided to do. But if you want to speak any more about how long have you been doing this and kind of how it works, that would be great.
Yeah, so my name's Armando Meadows. I'm a detective with the Buncombe County Sheriff's Office. We've been doing this for about 2 years, and that's our platform.
Good evening, folks. Don Everhart, Major Buncombe County Sheriff's Office, currently assigned to support operations. Just kind of here more so to support Detective Meadows. I know there's a lot of questions, concerns, and probably some additional follow-up that needs to happen with this Fuchsia system. I would respectfully defer questions as far as standard operating procedures and internal policies to Sheriff Miller or Chief Blake. Detective Meadows can certainly answer some of the technical IT parts of how the program works, but I think it's important that we're accurate with what we share.
Thank you. Any questions for these folks?
And then my last question would not be for you, but I do appreciate your being here, is that when we're looking at a budget allocation ongoing of $30,000, that once again implies that we have a budget surplus that we don't know what it is or how we're going to use it, and that's another part of the community conversation I think we need to talk about.
So I don't know if it's a surplus. It is a budget request to maintain the maintenance of the cameras. Just want to make sure that we are talking right now about 3 locations: City Hall, Pritchard Park, Lexington, and Hiawassee. And generally, these locations were identified because of visibility and crime that has been occurring in the locations. And this is definitely, we hope, people know that cameras are installed. It is intended to prevent crime and or to solve crime. I know that there are some concerns about some of the operational kinds of things. There will be a governance group that will be formed. Our chief of police will be a part of that group as they look at a consolidation of county sheriff department and APD collaborating to address crime in our community. And that's the goal. That's simply our goal.
Can you speak to, I know that it's been clarified this isn't used, that facial recognition software is not, you're not using anything, you're not using that. But on the data retention, I know it's real time, and in theory it could help a responding officer, someone able to tell them what they're seeing as they're approaching and help assist them. But how long is the footage stored?
Yes, so the footage stored is depending on whatever agreement we come to with businesses or private entities. And we leave that decision to you guys. On the facial recognition, our platform currently does not do facial recognition. The sheriff is not an advocate for facial recognition, and from my understanding, we will never go to facial recognition. So, just want to put it out there.
And my understanding was the data is not stored in perpetuity. It's not forever. It's
right. So it's not stored forever. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, part of what I was understanding when I toured with you yesterday and got to ask a million questions is that generally it's a 72-hour window where the information is stored, and then in an auto-delete cycle.
Correct.
That the company that we contract with, that Fusus itself, has zero access to this information, but for when the sheriff's department says, hey, there was an incident at this time at this camera, can you please download that to go into an evidence file? So that was something I was concerned about, was just who's access to this data, who owns this data, and I felt comfortable in hearing that answer, that it's our information. Another thing that came up that I was curious about, you mentioned the facial recognition technology, and I just want to tease that one out a little bit further. If that were on the table, I'd be extremely concerned. We know that that has connections to racial profiling. That's just not acceptable, and I'm very assured that that is not part of the conversation, and I don't think it would be appropriate for us to pursue that. So that was a big question I had. The other, what was the other one that was just coming up? This protocol, what do they call it? The Buncombe County Sheriff's Fusus program protocol and policy is pretty detailed, 12-page document. I would have loved to have looked at it sooner because there are a bunch of these questions about what is the approved process to request the information that you're inquiring about, and what is the process to review information that has been received. So for example, maybe over the course of the quarter, 10 files will be pulled. I don't know if that's an accurate number, but then there's going to be a quarterly review by this third-party review board, which our sheriff which our chief will be part of. So I think that the sheriff's department has done a thoughtful job at thinking about how to pursue this with protocols and policies. It was definitely a quick turnaround for me to like process that, and that's not on you. I'm just saying, as we learn about this, I think also having a public safety committee or environment and safety committee on the same day as a decision-making conversation, just as given a big time crunch. I mean, a lot of us have been focused on this the last couple of days, and so that's been a little bit tricky. So I wanted to share that bit too. I'll stop there without to see if anyone else has any questions or thoughts.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate the desire to think down the road and what could go wrong and what might go right. But I'd like to draw us back and pull us back in really to a comment that Tiffany made about what's happening right now to a vulnerable part of our community. Both David and Tiffany mentioned a meeting that was held, the Housing Authority. There was not a single person in that meeting who spoke against this. I'll back up just a little bit. The Housing Authority every year issues an annual report. They issued an annual report, and I guess you'll be sending that to everybody. And I want to take a moment to read their top policy recommendation. It says, listen to actual housing authority residents' requests and recommendations for immediate solutions to deteriorating public safety in their communities. Respond to those requests and, in the long term, increase local law enforcement funding and staffing to support proactive community policing like the Camden model. I'll go ahead and say also in that very meeting, a couple of things came up, but there was a clear desire that they wanted to express that it is not uncommon for folks who live outside their communities to show up before us to tell us what they need in their communities. And often what the folks who show up tell us that they need in their communities, that's not what they themselves believe they need in their communities. Specifically with regards to the cameras, as Tiffany mentioned, the county already has cameras there. The concern is about who's looking at these cameras. What this interlocal agreement would allow would be for APD, who has jurisdiction over the issues of which she spoke, to have access more readily available to them. So again, when we're thinking about this, please, please, please think about the people who at this point are the most harmed by crime in our community.
Hearing that and going back to what Deborah said, are we really talking about just the 3 locations, or are we going to talk about the very real needs of neighborhoods and community safety and expand? Because if we are going to expand and have that conversation that needs to be had, as we heard from our neighbors, then I think this warrants a deeper discussion than the consent agenda.
Well, they're having those conversations every month. It's just that we don't listen to them. So transparency is ideal, but for them, this is not some esoteric discussion. When I say we're talking about life and death issues, that's what we're talking about. I also had a conversation with, and he told me, call my name, with Reggie Robinson. Who is Reggie Robinson, you might ask? Reggie Robinson is a longtime multi-generational Ashevillean. He lives in Hillcrest. He also works for Asheville City Schools, and he is a member of
the Housing Authority Board. When I spoke to him yesterday, he wanted me to convey how adamantly he feels that this type of system is needed for his community.
And we're talking about cameras that are already there, but in that situation, and the need for more.
I'll chime in too. I've been bringing up the things I was worried about, that I've asked a lot of questions about and gotten information about, but I want to chime in with the parts that I'm excited about for this. I think that with the low staffing that we have in the police department, the impact to our response time, the way that this could work if our APD officers are basically get accounts to this system and have direct access is that as soon as someone calls 911 and dispatch hears of an issue, they can use the cameras to look and say, oh my gosh, someone's fleeing the scene. There's a blue hoodie and this is the license plate, so that in that, say, 4 minutes before we get an actual officer on the scene, we have the chance at looking at video information so that officer can show up with a little bit more information than they had before. And I think at a time where we don't have nearly as many staff as we did at one point, and we need to be figuring out how to test out new ways to police that are moving things forward. I think also video information adds a level of clarity once crimes are being prosecuted that I think has a lot of value. So, I started a place of really being cautiously optimistic about this being a tool that will improve our ability, not necessarily to prevent crime. We need to do that, and we need to pursue a lot of stuff for that as well. But when crimes are committed, our ability to pursue those cases and to really pursue increasing those arrests so that the justice is served. And we've talked about a lot of the concerns, and with anything new, I think that you got to weigh both. But I wanted to make sure in our conversation that I brought up the parts of this that I think are really valuable for us to be pursuing, as well as the concerns and what I learned from those concerns.
And the only thing I would like to say, I'd just like to reiterate what Ben Woody said about basically looking at what the agreement looks like. This agreement is renewable every year. So of course, if there's any issues, we can sort of get that worked out. And also, it's on a month-to-month basis, which means that either party has the right to cancel or terminate if every 30 days or whatever. So, but it gives us a chance to go ahead and put something in place that we need right away that can help everyone, and then we can tweak it as it goes. We cannot beat a dead horse forever and expect things to change. So I'm just like, I think we should go ahead and move forward. I think it's a great instrument. We need it, and hopefully we can get it in action tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for the Sheriff's Office or staff on this?
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Are we going to have the conversation about whether or not the residential needs are going to be met or just the central business district?
So once, I believe the Housing Authority will be a part of the FUSIS system.
So
And
that's okay.
Okay,
Another party,
so
yeah.
that means if we are a part of the FUSIS system, then
Yeah.
we have access.
Correct.
Yes.
And so that's the beauty of this.
Right.
And with our buildings being a part of it, then sheriff, whomever, whatever intergovernmental entity, law enforcement will also have access. So
Correct.
our partnership then has access to additional information,
Correct.
citywide, countywide, actually.
Great.
So a request that I have too is that I really feel like this information that Ben Woody was able to gather up after the Environment and Safety Committee was really helpful for me to answer any final questions I had. And I would like us to be able to have that information available to the public. So I don't know what the method to do that is.
It's the county's agreement. We'll have to get back with you. It's
and one
probably a
other thing-
public document.
Yeah, we already,
So I think our policy is currently public. It is on our website, with all our policies on our Sheriff's Office website.
May I say something too, concerning Tiffany? Like, this is a question, because basically, as Tiffany's like said, that they have cameras there, and she talks about all the shootings and things that are happening, but yet and still they hear nothing. So I'm just wondering, will as far as Buncombe County's cameras, will our police department have access to that information too? Because they now become partners.
Yes.
So, yeah, so
Yeah,
that's,
that's
so,
what-
yeah,
Mhm. that's
okay,
what they're
thanks.
So Asheville City Police
Just
will
want to
have
make sure.
access to those cameras.
Okay, so that is, yeah.
And one thing real quick, just to add, so this is a resolution tonight that authorizes the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Buncombe County Sheriff Office. So typically on our interlocal agreements, what you normally see is a staff report and a resolution, and then you're empowering your city manager to go forward from an operational perspective and to put these things into place. So the information that's really the Buncombe County policy and those items, if they're public records, and it sounds like they are, we can certainly work with that agency to make those available, but I just want to make clear that, you know, in terms of the information that was provided, that is typically how we transact interlocal agreements at this body. So I just want to be upfront about that. But again, if additional information is needed or desired, if it's a public record, we can certainly provide that.
Okay, any other questions or comments, council? We have a motion to approve. Okay.
Before we vote, I'm just gonna, my concern around this is now we have more clarity that hundreds of residents in Asheville are going to be on camera for 72 hours.
They currently
and-
are. They
Right.
currently are on
But
camera. This is not.
with our staff without an internal policy. And I think this is a really important tool that our community may need for community safety. I am curious why it's not going to go back to have that kind of conversation at Environment and Safety Committee. Because we had no public comment, but there were concerns that there were public comment that were excluded today. What is the difference in having a community conversation about this instead of a consent agenda?
I do feel like, you know, as the Environment and Safety Committee finished, we had two opportunities in the agenda for public comment. It appeared that we didn't have any, and then after we hung up, it became clear that two folks were waiting to discuss. Some information that really helped me was available to us this afternoon, but not necessarily to the public. I'd be comfortable in bringing this back to Environment and Safety next month so that this information can be shared and discussed.
Are you saying not vote on it?
Yeah.
Well, I just hope that there are no more shootings in Hillcrest between then and now.
You want your cake and eat it too? Okay.
I'm learning. This is council meeting number 3, and I'm working through process, and I was being really flexible.
I think what I would do is, I think we've got everybody here. I really hate that we would have to make them go through this again. But I do think that we have a policy that operates under the sheriff's, we don't have control over that. We have control over this interlocal agreement. I think if Environment and Public Safety wants to take up the issue of whether or not the police department should have an additional policy about how this footage is managed on our side, or whether or not there's even a need for that, I think go ahead and have that conversation. But that doesn't, I think we can move ahead with this and you all can continue to have that conversation.
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And all those opposed, please raise your hand. Did you get it, Maggie? Thank you. Okay, thank you all for coming to our council meeting tonight on this issue.
Esther, may I say one thing? Do we have Andrea Clark here?
Yeah,
she was one of the ones, I just wanted to, before we move further, she was one of the ones for the proclamation. Yes, and we'd like to acknowledge her. If you'd like to come up.
Thank you for joining us. I'm sorry we were speedy this at the beginning of our meeting. I apologize for that.
And is there anything you would like to come up and say or share with us? She's actually been instrumental.
Please do. Please take a moment. I'm sorry we skipped right. We didn't skip it. We did it, but it was quick.
Oh, no, but you were on the listed for a proclamation.
Under the proclamation, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to talk about the historic walking trail of James Vesta Miller, which I created with the help of some very fine people. And now I wanted to be able to continue with so many more buildings that he's built. But I wanted to bring it and put it perhaps on the city agenda, that there is a walking trail, Master Mason, from slave to Master Mason. And actually, some of his sons did the work up in the dome here. SI Beam was, you know, they created that. So, so it's take a walking tour of buildings crafted by Master Brick Mason, James Vester Miller.
Is there going to be a date for that? I know there have been other walking tours. Is there a particular date for that event?
Well, no, it's
a self-guided. You just
right,
okay.
exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Great.
And what I'm up to now is trying to get the churches to open perhaps one day in a month, so that folks can see inside the glorious building the churches. They are absolutely beautiful, and so many people haven't seen them.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so
So I
much.
have one more little one.
Okay.
So this is the equal justice map, calendar for 2023. And you can get it in Alabama and Equal Justice Initiative. And I was thinking, it's people that I've given them to for New Year's gift. And it's a wonderful map with beautiful pictures, and you can order it yourself. There's no way that I could have them sold anyway, so you just go through Equal Justice. It's a beautiful, very beautiful map with wonderful pictures inside. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
Okay,
for coming down.
And is it possible to get an extra copy of that proclamation? Because she and Dr. Fox were actually sharing
Sure,
that
we
with
can
us.
do that.
And we can get you,
Yes,
so we'll get
absolutely.
you a
We'll get it to
proclamation,
you.
a full proclamation. Thank you.
And may I leave some of these?
Absolutely. Maggie will take them over there. And
Okay, I'll
Keep
get them
them
for
first.
you, Maggie. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a little add-on here on our agenda of a brief manager's report. I'm going to ask Deborah Campbell to, I knew there was something up here when I didn't see a manager's report. That something was missing.
And I deeply apologize for this last-minute addition, but I promise you, it won't take long. And it is going to cover a really, really important initiative that's going to be undertaken in our community, and it's the point-in-time count regarding unsheltered people in our community. And it's very timely because tomorrow we will be having a community meeting and session around a study that has been done recommending and assessing some of our strengths and challenges and a path forward for us. So I've asked Emily Ball to come and just talk to us a little bit about the point-in-time count. And I think we will be pleasantly surprised at the difference in terms of our ability to garner volunteer help from this year from what we had last year. So I'll let you, I hope that wasn't a spoiler alert.
From your lips to God's ears.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Emily Ball in the Homeless Strategy Division here at the city and the Community and Economic Development Department. As you know, the point-in-time count is coming up next week, and that is an annual event for us. I know you all know this, but just to recap, that's an annual event for our community and communities across the country to really understand on a single night, single point in time, what the census of people who are without housing in our community is, who they are, what their household and demographic characteristics are, how long they have been homeless, and that includes folks who are in emergency shelters, transitional housing, and people who are unsheltered, so folks who are camping or staying in cars or otherwise in places not meant for human habitation. Our goal, obviously there are limitations to that count, but our goal is to be as comprehensive as possible, and I would tell you it is our best data source in the community at this point. We certainly intend to change that. We want to work hard to increase the data available on homelessness, but for the time being, the point-in-time count is our best snapshot of homelessness in our community, and by our community, I mean Buncombe County. So we include folks across Buncombe County, not only in the city of Asheville. Count is coming up next Tuesday night And again, really important community data for us. This informs our local strategy and also informs federal resources that are available to our community to respond to homelessness. The count is only as good as the counters, and so it's really important that we have a really strong volunteer effort in this. And so far, we've had a really tremendous community response when we have reached out to ask folks to volunteer, including a number of people in this room, including some of you all. We're really grateful to have your participation in that count this year. We also have team leads for all of the teams that are going to be going out into the community who are homeless service staff. So they're folks who are professionals who are familiar with people who are without housing in our community and can really support that effort to ensure that we get the best data possible. We certainly welcome additional community participation. We'd be glad to have additional community volunteers. And I also want to mention, we've discussed this in this group before, that we are looking at the possibility of doing an additional count in the summer. We've had a long community conversation that it seems that the nature of folks who are homeless, the scale of the homeless population changes over the course of the year. And so we'll be talking with the Homeless Initiative Advisory Committee, which is our Continuum of Care board, about the possibility of conducting an additional count in the summer. Again, important data for our community, good event coming up next week. I think we have a good methodology in place, good volunteer effort, and so we'll be looking forward to getting those results.
Emily, could you tell them where they could go if they want to sign up? I don't know if I remember you saying
Yes, the best, I'm sorry, this is not super clear, but the best option is to just contact me directly. My contact information is all over our website on the Homeless Strategy Division pages at ashevillennc.gov.
Okay.
Thank you.
If there are no questions, that concludes the manager's report. Thank you very much, Emily.
Thank you. Okay, is anybody else cold? Is it? Yeah, it's like, is the air on? I'm not sure what's happening, Maggie. I know it's either cold or she just rolled her eyes at me. I am freezing though, so I don't know what's going on. Usually it's hot. So, we have one item under our public hearings agenda. That's a public hearing to consider amending a previously approved conditional zoning approval for property located at 264 Inca Heritage Parkway to make site plan and layout changes. And Will Palmquist is here to talk to us about this issue. He's wearing a sweater, smart guy.
Came prepared. Great. Well, good evening, Mayor, members of council. Will Palmquist with Planning and Urban Design. I'll be presenting this request for conditional zoning amendment for a project known as the Inca Commerce Park. The existing zoning through the previously adopted ordinance number 4853 in January of 2021 is already commercial expansion. That prior rezoning allowed for a one-story warehouse distribution building with a lot of parking, including van fleet parking spaces, a number of technical modifications and conditions for the retention of the historic clock tower and greenway easement. So that's the existing zoning on the site. Here's an aerial of the site itself, located in the Enca area of western Asheville. You can see Smoky Park Highway to the north, existing lighter industrial uses to the south, as well as surrounding features such as the stream to the west and the north. The future land use was amended through the previous conditional zoning process. So it is currently Employment and Anchor Institution Center, and therefore no change in that designation would be required for the proposed conditional rezoning tonight. So the proposed site plan and project consists of 3 one-story light industrial and distribution buildings totaling approximately 585,000 square feet. So about almost 3 times larger than the previously approved project. Off-street parking totaling 463 spaces, a new roadway connection, and stormwater retention ponds. Similar conditions to the prior rezoning in that the historic brick clock tower on the site will be preserved, and there will be an easement for the Inca Heritage Greenway. Landscaping, including street trees, parking lot, and building impact screening are provided. Access is off Anka Heritage Parkway, and then 10-foot wide sidewalks are proposed throughout the site as is required in the commercial expansion district. And then the site plans are all pretty similar. It's basically loading with loading bays at the rear of each of the buildings, and then kind of the front-facing facade towards the parking lot areas with pedestrian entrances on the front. So there are 3 elevations for your reference. They're all relatively similar. As mentioned, the 2 conditions of the project include the easement for the Anka Heritage Greenway, which is a county proposed greenway project, the retention of the historic clock tower, as well as having amenity and seating areas and a historic marker on site. And there are a total of 4 technical modifications that are being addressed through this conditional zoning process. The first is having building entrance spacing in excess of the required 75-foot maximum distance. Parking lot tree islands with a minimum width of 9 feet instead of the required 10 feet standard. An outdoor lighting technical specification that's basically the same as the prior rezoning and includes more lumens than the current UDO allows for per light. However, without any kind of allowance for any additional dispersion off-site, so the light will still be required to be maintained on-site, and then the backlight uplight glare rating would still allow for the light to be directed downward instead of upwards into the sky. And then finally, that no bike lanes are provided into the development. The project was approved with conditions at the Technical Review Committee on July 11th. It was continued a number of times at the applicant's request and then approved at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing on January 4th. The project is consistent with the Asheville's Living Asheville Comprehensive Plan, including the future land use of employment and anchor institution, which is described as important employment clusters and are often substantial anchors for the wider community. The project also supports a number of goals in the plan, including to encourage responsible growth, to promote great architecture and urban design to enhance placemaking, to make streets more walkable, comfortable, and connected, and to facilitate real estate development that maximizes public benefit. Therefore, staff concurs with the Planning and Zoning Commission and recommends approval of the proposed conditional zoning. That concludes my presentation. We'll have to answer any questions.
Questions, anybody?
Do we have a dollar amount on that tree canopy fee in lieu estimate?
I did the math earlier today, and it comes out to approximately $35,000 fee in lieu.
It's greatly reduced because now the plan is not a giant parking lot only.
Yeah, they're only requesting 0.5% of the required 20%, which adds up considering the site's 45.5 acres. So it's still a decent amount of land, but that would be the approximate fee required to pay at the time of issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
So for those who are following this conversation, in a previous request for rezoning for this lot, we were looking at close to $500,000 for tree canopy fee in lieu. Is that correct?
I think that's what it was.
Even though it's a smaller amount, have we identified any restrictions to ensuring the results of tree canopy can be repaired or maintained of a similar amount with, like, are there any restrictions to using the fee tree in lieu? Or can they be used immediately?
You may not be the right person to ask about that.
Not totally certain, to be honest.
I know there's still there.
Maybe Brad. Brad's acting like he knows.
It's all an act. To answer your question the best I'm able, there are some restrictions in place currently with the fee in lieu that we charge for open space. But for the fee in lieu with regard to tree canopy, those same restrictions and limitations are not there. So legally, we are able to collect that money and spend that money immediately. And there does not exist under state law the geographical limitations as there are with open space, but it is pursuant to our ordinances as adopted by council, how we would go about spending that. And I do think there is some intent there to reinvest the money into tree canopy preservation or creation within the same, what I think we call districts within the city where it came from.
Okay. So I've tried to collect some thoughts in advance because this is the third time since my time on council that we're looking at the same location. So I appreciate the commitments to maintain the clock tower for the future Greenway connection, some multimodal infrastructure, though it was noted not bike lanes. Those are simultaneously both important to our community and very basic. So given our experience with development, this location and the limited land available for economic development in our community, I've seen this location used for what looked and smelled like Amazon distribution warehouse. And a second, which was a missed opportunity for living wage manufacturing jobs leveraged at this location. For me, that's a really big difference in what we're looking for our community for appropriate land use. So I'm understanding that if we move forward with this, this will help us get what we want out of economic development, not just for this location, but precedent setting in our community. My concern is I'm not inclined to toss aside our collective leveraging at this point when we have so few locations to leverage for living wage jobs. And additionally, I don't see the kind of community benefits that go beyond this, like the kind of partnerships for renewable energy at a location like this that are gonna help us meet our goals. So, understanding that we're trying to get ahead of this one, I don't think this goes up far enough in getting ahead without leveraging what we need.
Okay. Are there any other zoning questions? We've got some folks with economic development here to speak, I think, more to that issue. So, any other zoning questions? All right. Thanks, Will. I think to Councilwoman Roney's point about not to conflate the two issues, but if we are approached for an incentive grant around economic development, which is what happened last time, we do have income requirements before they'd qualify. So not to conflate the zoning, what we're being asked to do here is vote on zoning. I think, are you saying to the extent it could be tied to an approval of a zoning with the, I mean, because I guess what I'm saying is, what if we were to approve this and they go ahead and build so that it's a site ready, it makes us more competitive in recruiting employers. And if they're employers that want to take advantage of our incentives, they're going to have to pay wages that meet our requirements. Clark Duncan, you're the only person signed up to speak on this item, so I'm going to open the public hearing, and you are going to say all what I said much better and clearly than I just did. So welcome Clark Duncan, who is our Senior Vice President of Economic Development with the Economic Development Commission Coalition for Asheville and Buncombe County.
We'll put prepared remarks aside. I'll lead with, it's great to be with you, thank you. I do represent our EDC board, our 30-year partnership with City, County, and Chamber. What we have in front of us is a really unique opportunity for Buncombe County, and I would say unique probably across the practices that I've seen in Western North Carolina. The same way that we invest in the skills and talents of our workforce to drive economic growth, communities invest in or can encourage investment in buildings just like this. I would point out a few key differences in the site plan that you noted, Councilwoman, which really start with this site plan is focusing on dense buildings. Buildings, not parking lots. And buildings are where we can attract the higher technology, higher wage uses that I know are our common ground between the Economic Development Coalition and the strategic vision of this council. Squeezing as much high-value investment in a building means we are also attracting the high-value jobs, high-wage jobs required to operate those capital-intensive processes. And to have a building come out of the ground speculatively with private sector investment, not ours, is a tremendous asset that makes us far more competitive in the market We do continue to pursue that strategy and have a number of those leads actively looking at this site plan as we speak. I can tell you in terms of the tools of government available to this council, one, of course, is economic development incentives, where we can leverage the wage, the employment practices, the sustainability practices, the investment we want to see in our next generation employers. But I would say we're also one of those investments from the city. And how we execute and use our internal staff resources, they are not used on distribution purposes because they don't advance those goals. So we are using our limited resources exclusively to bring advanced manufacturing, high-wage tenants and prospects in partnership with the private sector plan you see in front of you. I'd be happy
Thank
to
you
answer
for
any more
being here.
specific.
Can you give some examples for those who are following this conversation on when an action like this would have resulted in leveraging living wage or better jobs, like manufacturing jobs?
Not sure I understand the question.
Do we have any examples locally where what you have suggested sounds great, where it's worked?
I can tell you, we haven't seen speculative industrial development in Buncombe County
At all.
in decades. It's a common practice in economic development in other communities where you often build a speculative building or shell building to help attract a user. That has not been a practice that we've had public leadership on in Buncombe County or really across the West for a variety of reasons, both financial and practical.
And if I understand correctly, one of the reasons we lost the last opportunity was because we were competing with a community that did have that. And so the employer was looking at, okay, I'm gonna have to build something here and you're already ready to go for me to retrofit your existing structure. So that is a challenge for us and I mean, but in some communities, this funding actually even has to happen on a government level, but we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
This is private sector investment trying to attract an employer that could potentially be competitive or of a quality that might even qualify for us to be able to provide incentive to. And the fact that you're here makes me think that that's what would happen, or that's the intention, because when you're working on a project, it is of the caliber that we're going to be interested in from that standpoint, meaning they're paying competitive wages above living wage wages.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I would say we are very much continuing to pursue that strategy with this site. If you all are familiar with the availability of industrial product in the city, this is likely the last opportunity, as you correctly point out. But even if you look further out in the county for a variety of reasons, both topographical or lack of utility service, this is a particularly exciting opportunity. And historical practice and very recent history that this council is familiar with, speed is often the determining factor. We might check all the boxes from our talented workforce to our quality of life to our tax incentives, but without a building to facilitate meeting their business plans, which are often accelerated in today's economy, we lose out on opportunities as we did as recently as last summer.
I'm in total agreement with you, Duncan, because I realize that a lot of tenants, basically, when they come here, they cannot find this caliber of buildings, and especially not within the city limits, like you said, further out in Buncombe County. So it's a definite need for it. So I can definitely think it's a great project, and hopefully we can all support it.
I can assure you our challenge in economic development in Asheville and Buncombe County is squeezing the maximum investment in every acre and every square footage of the buildings that we do have. And that is also true of squeezing the most value out of the employment we're able to create out of that square footage.
If this passes today and we do have an opportunity to join in partnership with using taxpayer dollars, what does that look like from our end? What levers can we then use to make sure that the incentives match our community values? Because there are questions in our community about whether or not the jobs that we attract match our community values.
Sure. I would point to a policy that the county has exercised for a number of years, and I think the city, we've had a number of discussions with staff, might be interested in emulating, which moves beyond the traditional measurements of jobs and the wages, the caliber of the jobs, and the capital investment, the taxable revenue to the jurisdiction, into employment practices, tying accelerated bonuses, for example, for inclusive hiring practices or for sustainability practices, and really putting incentives where they mean the most to this community and encouraging those behaviors, whether they're social and employment behaviors or sustainability investments.
So I'm understanding that'll be part of a future conversation that we're going to have.
I think we could, absolutely. I see Nikki Reed here listening to that intently, so I, that seems like something, especially if they've already invented the wheel in that regard, that would be helpful.
It's a model that I think increasingly communities are looking at, and Buncomb's used it several times successfully.
Okay, any other questions for Clark? All right. Oh,
Thank you
well,
for your
you
time.
were supposed to be our, you were signed up as a.
I will waive my
but
time.
All right. Thanks, you just.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, we don't have anyone else signed up for public comment under this, so I will close the public hearing. Are there questions, comments, or a motion? And there should be a suggested motion there attached to your agenda.
Go ahead.
No.
I have it. Go ahead.
You got it.
Okay. I
Y'all
moved
saw
to
it was long.
It's very long. I was like Maggie. No. I move to approve the conditional zoning amendment request for the property located at 264 Inca Heritage Parkway Zone Commercial Expansion Conditional Zone for the modification of the site plan, and find that the request is reasonable, is in the public interest, is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, and meets the development needs of the community, in that the request, 1, encourages responsible growth by directing growth in designated growth areas that provide access to employment opportunities. 2, promotes great architecture and urban design to enhance placemaking by encouraging the preservation of the historic Inca Community Clock Tower. 3, make streets more walkable, comfortable, and connected by preserving the opportunity for future greenway construction. And 4, facilitates real estate development that maximizes public benefit by locating an employment opportunity in areas slated for future growth.
This is Sandra, I'll second.
Okay, we have a very long motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, well, thank you very much. That concludes our public hearings agenda. We have a couple items under new business. The first is a resolution authorizing the city manager to develop a scope of work for an official audit in response to the Community Reparations Commission's immediate recommendation to cease harm impacting the African American community. And Brenda Mills is here to present this item to us. Welcome, Brenda.
Thank you, Mayor and fellow council members. I hope you're doing well this evening, and Happy New Year. It's been almost a year since I saw you. Maggie, thank you for helping me out. So I'm just here to talk a little bit about how we got to this point with the immediate recommendation. So we're going to start with some key takeaways. In December is when the Community Reparations Commission passed the immediate recommendation. This was to end further harm by ceasing repetition of institutional processes that led to racially disparate outcomes. This included a call for the city and county both to conduct an official audit to ensure compliance with all of our local, state, and federal laws, regulatory bodies, codes of conduct, consent decrees, confirming that further harm to the African American community had ended. The City Council and County Commission are being asked to consider the adoption of this resolution, authorizing the staff to develop a scope of work, which will lead to the selection of a firm to do the requested audit. When the resolution is approved, City County staff will work with the Community Reparations Commission to develop a scope of work for the audit, select a firm, and then review and prioritize remediation opportunities. The scope of work, audit firm selection process, and review and prioritization of opportunities will be discussed at their monthly Reparations Commission meeting. So just to give a general overview of the immediate recommendation, and I know you all have read this, so I'm going to try not to read. Recommended that the city and county provide assurance and take effective measures to end ongoing and current harms that are intentional or unintentional. Call for the city and county to conduct an audit. This audit would demonstrate the cessation of harm has occurred and prevent further harm and threats to the African American community. Recommended that the city and county promote and enforce codes of conduct and ethical norms to include the following: confidence building between government and African Americans, truth-seeking mechanisms and processes, timely accountability of the dispensation of recommendations. Our draft resolution overview is as follows. It describes what the Community Reparations Commission vote was taken on December 5th of 2022, commits and provides assurances that the city will take necessary and reasonable action to address harm due to intentional and unintentional policies in the areas of education, healthcare, housing, economic development, and justice. It summarizes the call to conduct an official audit to ensure compliance. It directs city and county staff to collaborate with the Community Reparations Commission, develop a scope of work and formal solicitation to select a firm, and then upon the audit completion, we will be reviewing and prioritizing the audit findings and to remediate perpetuation of further harm. A bit of a timeline, like we said, December 5 was the adoption of the immediate recommendation. We took time from that point to around January 6 for staff to develop this resolution and drafted it. Actually, it was Rachel Wood. She loves doing this. January 9, we met with the Community Reparations Commission to go over the draft resolution. And the 17th County Commission and City Council Equity and Engagement Committee received a briefing about this resolution. January 24th, I'm here today talking to you. February 7th, the County Commission will look at and adopt this draft resolution. We go back to the Community Reparations Commission on the February 20th and March 20th to review the scope. Now, what we are proposing in terms of reviewing the scope is that we have a representative from each of the impact focus areas to work with the city staff and the county staff in the preparing of the scope of work. So we're really excited about that. We will let them choose who those representatives are. Spring of 2023, we'll finalize and advertise the solicitation. Late summer of 2023, finalize the audit and review and prioritize recommendations. And then we'll have ongoing feedback sessions to the Community Reparations Commission, and we'll coordinate it with their impact focus areas. So just to go over quickly our key takeaways. December, they passed this immediate recommendation. It included a call for city and county to conduct an audit. City Council and County Commission are being asked to consider an adoption of this resolution. And when the resolution is approved, we'll get to work on the scope of work, selecting a firm, and then the scope of work and the audit firm selection process will all be done in conjunction with the Community Reparation Commission. And that's my presentation. I will answer any questions you may have. I just want to tell you, we do have our chair and vice chair here, Dr. Dwight Mullen and Mr. Warner Little, if you have any questions for them as well.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a quick one. I missed the timeline one. I was listening and looking, so when will the conclusion be?
We're looking at the end of the summer.
That we'll have the audit back?
Mm-hmm.
Well, but also, I assume it's possible that a respondent to the RFP could say they need more or less time. I mean,
Yes.
Isn't that a possibility?
That is a possibility.
Yeah, because we don't.
Yeah, that just sounds like.
So let's just say
Right, they might tell
summer
us we
and
have a
fall,
really
late
unrealistic-
fall.
Yeah.
But we will let you know. We will keep you abreast of what's going on.
Thanks.
Does that sound good? Any more questions?
I do have one question, but it's for
Yes,
the
ma'am.
leadership of the Community Reparations Commission. I know between their last meeting and our equity and engagement meeting, there were some questions, and I see that there's, in our attached documents, both the original recommendation and the updated recommendation, which seems to reflect what was
Other
missing in the
changes.
minutes.
Yes, ma'am.
And the original and updated resolution. I just was hoping to confirm that this matches the recommendation from the commission, the way we see it
It does,
today.
and let me tell you why. Because I spent Friday and Saturday calling every one of them and speaking to them either on the phone or through video to get their feedback. I went over the initial immediate recommendation, what changes were made with that, and then looked at what was added or changed or readjusted for this resolution. No one seemed to have any major concerns. The few people that gave feedback, those are included in the red line and the green line documents.
So I'm going through the redlining, and maybe I'm just not seeing it because I thought I did see it. I watched the equity committee meeting, and I believe Dr. Mullen especially talked about being certain that we specifically included race and gender, so Black women. Is that anywhere in this, or is that going to be at the scope of work?
It should be.
I just don't see it, but, okay.
I want to say, it was one of the slides, I'm sorry. It is included.
Okay, thank you.
Right. All righty, thank you.
Is it possible to get a confirmation, since we have the chair and vice chair here?
So we will confirm, Brenda did her due diligence in contacting us as well as working with us and the staff and commission to get everything done the way we requested it be. So we got.
In addition, I'd like to point out that the resolution that's passed by the Reparations Commission has soft areas in it, and it's both qualitative and quantitative in its request. And those soft areas we were promised we would operationalize as we worked with putting the actual resolution in practice. I'm really happy about this. There seems to be a harmony, and I don't know if you know, between what you all are doing as City Council and what Buncombe County is doing through the commissioners.
And I just want to highlight another conversation we had. And to be clear, so this audit is one that should be both external and internal, is that?
Yes, in fact, one of the ways to think about it is that we're looking not just to vet the outcomes of public policy areas, we're also looking at the origins of public policy areas. So that requires us to look inside as well as the eventual impact it has on our community.
Thank you. Thank you both for coming to the many, many meetings you've had to come to shepherd this through.
I just want to respond to Councilwoman Mosley. In your resolution at the bottom, under the wherefores, it includes gender.
Okay.
If you look at the bottom of the resolution, just want to make sure.
Because we got like 6, okay.
Okay, council, we have 2 people signed up to speak on this, but first on these items, we'll take a motion to approve in a second, and then I'll call on the speakers who have signed up to speak on it.
Do you want to make this one too?
Yes, please.
I move to recommend authorizing the city manager to develop a scope of work for an official audit in response to the Community Reparations Commission's immediate recommendation to cease harming impacting the African American community.
Second, Sandra, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. The first person signed up to speak under this item is Jonathan Wainscott.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Wainscott. It's another timeline that we could refer to is back in 2017, this body, not you obviously, but the Asheville City Council passed a resolution to have a referendum about our voting system, whether or not we should adopt a district system or an at-large system. And 6 days after that resolution, that was the very first day of the Department of Equity's existence, and the very first day on the job for then director Kimberly Archie. And here we had this huge issue at hand, and it never piqued her interest to examine that. And a couple of years, I guess the very next year, we changed our charter. And I was even asking for the Department of Equity to be included in that conversation, and it never happened. So this is a roster of all the elected officials going all the way back to 1849. Back then we had a board of aldermen, And in 1883, the city of Asheville was incorporated. And in, 1950, we abolished the Board of Aldermen and established the Board of Commissioners. And then in 1931, we established the body that we have today, council manager form of government, at-large election system, which was designed then in the heart of Jim Crow years to disenfranchise the black community, and it did. And this is a huge list of all the council members and mayors since 1931, and I doubt you could count them that fast. Since the creation of the Asheville City Council in 1931, a total of 653 years of service has been given by all of our mayors and council members. Only 56 of those years have been served by African Americans. This constitutes an 8.6% representation of the black community for the entire history of the Asheville City Council. So for every year that has been served by this city council since 1931, there's only been 8.6% African American representation every single year going back then. 1/4 of African American service was accomplished by only one councilwoman and mayor, and that was Mayor Terry Bellamy, and another 25% has been served by all of those who have followed her through 2002. Of course, that 8.6% number will go up in the next couple of years, given the service that's being provided now. So I hope in the scope of work that an audit of this particular body and its history will be included. Thank you very much.
And the other person signed up to speak under this item is David Greenson.
Hey, council and staff. I'm mostly up here to say how thrilling this is, and to just offer appreciation for the work of staff to move this process forward so quickly. You know, sometimes for those of us on the outside, I'm sure for some of you on the inside, you know, government can seem to move slowly. And I really just am excited at how quickly this is advanced, you know, from coming before the commission in December to now. So just wanted to share that appreciation. I did want to say that one little thing I would add to the report that Brenda gave, and big thanks to Brenda for the work that she did, and calling everybody that's just above and beyond. But one thing that y'all probably all are aware of is that the resolution was introduced back in November. So the Reparations Commission, some people may not know, has a pretty deep process of making sure of vetting these things. Anything that's going to be voted on by the commission has to be introduced a full month before, so everyone has a chance to dig into it, make feedback before it gets finally voted on. Recommendations that are coming down the pike have also been thoroughly discussed, vetted in these impact focus area groups. So there's just a lot of process that's happening before it comes to the resolution being passed. So my concern going forward is that we continue to streamline this process. And so I think that with all of that in-depth vetting that's happening before the commission even brings it to you all, it doesn't necessarily need to also then go through a whole committee process as well. It's you know, obviously there are situations like with the water crisis where you all just immediately begin taking it up together as a body to vote on it. And I think the issues that are coming before you all from the Reparations Commission should be treated as similarly sort of important, and we don't need to have an extra layer of bureaucracy here. I'd love to see things move as quickly as they did here. So that would be my one suggestion, is that as we go forward, we can just bring it all to you all's attention, and you guys can discuss it at the next available meeting. It'd be terrific. But mostly, yay, thank you.
And that's appreciated. It's a little bit tricky sometimes trying to figure out what needs to run through our subcommittees and what doesn't. I will say this didn't slow it down because we got it right to the next council meeting regardless. But still, with our new committee structure, we're figuring out what needs to go and what doesn't need to go. Okay, so those were the two folks that were signed up to speak on this. We already have a motion and a second, so unless there are any other questions, we'll take a vote. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. Yay. We have a rule against clapping, but
Just felt
I was
good.
reminded. Okay, the last item on our printed agenda is new business item B, an affirmation of independent review committee membership, which will analyze events and circumstances related to the recent water outage. Ben Woody's going to speak on this. Council, this is, as you all know, what we discussed at our last meeting, that tonight we would appoint 7 of the 9 members to the Water Review Committee, or whatever we're calling it. And next week, the County Commission will make their 2 appointments to complete the appointment of this committee. Ben, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I actually don't have a presentation. I'm just going to speak briefly on this item. At your January 10th meeting, Council voted to establish an independent review committee. That committee is made up, it's a multidisciplinary committee made up of 9 members. Among a number of things, one of their primary goals is to take a look at the prolonged water outage that just occurred, and through that process and their assessment of it, provide recommendations back to the City Council in terms of emergency response, communication efforts, and operations, and information as it relates to the water system infrastructure. So what we've done since that January 10th meeting is we have put together a list of potential candidates that is in your agenda materials. We have confirmed with these candidates that they are in fact interested in serving. I'll remind council and the community, this is a volunteer job, so these are professionals that are willing to provide their expertise and time to help us assess our water system and do better in the future in the event we experience issues again. As you mentioned, Mayor, the city will appoint 7 of the seats, and then at their first meeting in February, the county commissioners will appoint the remaining 2 seats. And with that, I'm going to stop and see if council has any questions about any of the candidates. I'll note one more thing. Staff did provide a set of recommendations for your consideration. But again, this independent review committee is formed at the creation of the council, and it will be your duty tonight to appoint its 7 members. Is there any questions I can answer?
I have a process question. So when I was revisiting, we did finally have a full list of all the applicants, and I noticed the process was unfamiliar. So normally when I'm looking for information on how folks might self-select demographic information about like whether or not they're a homeowner or renter, or maybe there's information about their lived experience. We did something I hadn't seen before. Can you speak a little bit about the process and how it was published so that folks might have applied?
Yes, so this isn't an advisory board, so it's not a typical process where the city would have an application and people would submit and we'd review that and send it through the boards and commissions subcommittee. Since this was a independent review committee, the candidates really primarily just reached out to the city. So they self-selected their interest in this process. Anybody that we received an email from, we followed up with them to, again, number one, make sure that they were in fact interested, to make sure we understand their qualifications for the committee. And that's how we were able to get the resumes and statement of interest for your consideration. However, since this is a largely technical committee that's providing specific feedback on the water outage, and we need people that have certain skill sets, we did not have an application process. So again, these candidates came to us by expressing interest directly.
And may I if I could just add that we also reached out.
Correct.
To technical people, particularly like there's a recommendation for an individual that actually lives in Knoxville because of the type of topography and a similar type of system, water system. And so I think that's what we were seeking. So we did do some outreach.
We did, and so that's, I think, was to ensure that between the professionals that expressed interest, and then again, we did contact some representatives to make sure there was a slate of candidates for council to choose from. We wanted you to have some options for each seat.
So if I can piggyback for a second, and I suppose my question isn't for you because it's not related to while this is, I suppose, a first for us, I can't imagine that something like this hasn't happened somewhere else. I'm wondering if the School of Government ever offers guidance or gets involved with independent reviews, and if that is so, is there still an opportunity after we approve these folks? Because I'm wondering if they can help us
Funny you
understand.
should ask.
Funny you should ask.
Ben will tell you about
Yeah,
that.
it is. We did reach out to the School of Government, and they declined participation in this process.
But they do, they
have a
did in this
facilitator.
situation, but they do sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. They do sometimes, but in this particular instance, they did decline. We have reached out to a facilitator, however, who is an adjunct faculty member at the School of Government who is willing to come in and facilitate this process to help lead this independent review.
So that'll be the support
Yeah.
for the body.
Okay.
Right.
So I thought that was, I agree with you. I think you got to have somebody who
Yeah.
knows how to do that.
Do we have understanding on why they declined?
Well, we're catching them in the middle of their semester, and we need it done
I
quickly.
think that the timeline, so we're doing this entire thing in 90 days, so I think that was of a concern to a lot of professionals, actually. There's a number of professionals that were, that I was asked to reach out to, and I did, and oftentimes I think the timeline is concerned. It's a lot of information to work through in really a short period of time.
Could they do an independent review of the independent review?
Yeah, I mean, there may be some after-action analysis. Again, I will say the facilitator that we have identified, and we ask a number of facilitators too, but the one we've identified is an adjunct professor and has a relationship with the School of Government. So I do think there's some opportunity for some kind of post-independent review conversation about maybe what went well and perhaps what could have went better. Of course, I hope it all goes well, but you know, I think some analysis makes sense.
The other challenge around a facilitator who knows the topic is that a lot of them are with engineering firms that contract with the city. So it's a little, a little tricky because, maybe someone would say, well, they've got a conflict because they contracted with the city to perform these services in this other arena. So, I mean, that was a little bit, from what I understand, kind of challenging to navigate.
One of the things I appreciated, because it is a volunteer effort, is that we were able to find an applicant that is a renter. I think there's going to be a lot of concern around what happens with communications when people aren't the primary contact. One of the other things that came up in our last meeting was if we missed the opportunity to not just look at what we did, because staff were really plugged in and at max capacity, but how we could have prevented it from happening, and also future emergency response. So I just wanted to I'm certainly looking at this awareness when I'm looking at the resumes between emergency response professional options, that we might not be including someone who's not just looking at what we did, but what we could have done. That said, I support the staff recommendations.
Any other questions for Ben?
I'll just add that, another item that came to the Environment and Safety Committee today was staff moving forward on the emergency management plan and the continuity of operations plan. So we talked about that last time. This is the type of detailed protocols that I think will help us with that future looking based on the experiences we've had. So I think that we have that in the queue as well as what will be happening with this task force.
Thank you.
Okay, speaking of long motions, there's a motion there with the list of names, if anybody wants to make that
I'm happy
motion.
to read it.
Okay.
I move to affirm the following 7 members to the Water Outage Independent Review Committee: residential water customer Michelle Ashley, commercial water customer Carolyn Roy, communications professional Mike McGill, communications professional Rob Brisley, public water system subject matter expert John McLaughlin, public water system subject matter expert Ted Tyree, and public water system subject matter expert Michael Holcomb.
Okay, we have, go ahead.
I second.
Second, okay, thank you. All right, just check and see if we've got anyone. I have one person signed up under this item, and it's Katie Hudson.
I'll try to talk fast. I am a little bit concerned about the exclusion of a great applicant, Kim Murphy. I don't know her personally, but she's a residential and commercial customer and is a water scientist and a farmer and would be a good complement to the rest of the board. I'm also concerned that there's only 2 women nominated, and they're both the customers. And I'm a little bit concerned about the demographic makeup of the rest of the board being men who are probably going to think of themselves as having more, okay, let me not make an assumption, men who have lots of titles. So I'm a little concerned about the power dynamic between just 2 women representing the entirety of customer side against the rest of the board being men who think of themselves as official. And I also want to emphasize that we should have much more than just the 2 customers on this board for the same power dynamic reasons. But like especially, I love that Michelle Ashley is a renter here and as our residential customer. But I think also Kim Murphy really needs to be on this board because of the overlap between being a resident experience and being an expert in like customer side water supply. Basically, I believe that you need to give your residents a little more credit and think about people who really want their voices heard as opposed to people who were contacted by Ben. No offense. I think there's a missed opportunity if we ignore people who had a primary qualification that would meet water management qualifications, but like primarily put resident. I guess we're speaking to the self-identification of classifications of like, some people would be qualified for the expert positions but signed up as a resident. So I want us to not overlook the fact that we could probably consider some locals before we go outside of town. Yeah, that was it.
And just in terms of the process, the county will be appointing 2 additional folks, so there will be opportunity to add a couple more people to this committee. And that will be at their next meeting next week. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, that concludes the printed agenda. We have some folks signed up for general public comment for items that were not already covered on the agenda. And we also have a closed session after this. Folks, once again, you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and Maggie, I see that's about to beep. I do have some folks that are signed up and yielding their time to one person, so I assume that that person is planning on speaking for 10 minutes because we've got 3 people yielding their time, but those 3 people will just need to raise their hand when we get to that part. So the first person signed up to speak is Jonathan Wainscott with another presentation.
That's right. So now we're going to jump back to 1883. It's a birthday for Asheville in a way because 1883 was the year that Asheville was incorporated as a city, and it's 2023. So happy 140th birthday to the city of Asheville. And the date is so important. It's on the adornment above our entryway to this fabulous, beautiful building. It's right there. I'm looking right at it. It's right in front of you guys. All right, so highlights of 1883, as many people know. Let's see, the town of Asheville gets all grown up and incorporates as a city. Asheville celebrates its big city status with the arrival of the railroad. Lesser known and lesser celebrated fact is this was the arrival of Locke Craig, who was a vowed white supremacist and was a city attorney over there. And not at all. And a couple of years ago, we just learned that Newton Shepherd was actually the first elected official here in Asheville and sat on the board of aldermen. It was reported that he only served 1 year, was elected in 1882. And I was looking at the year 1887 because I thought that that might be where we started our ward system. And I went down to the vaults, if I may, and Maggie was kind enough to let me in. And this is one of the fancy books that's down there. And this is the fancy book that has the accomplishments of 1883. You know, you could kind of consider the mayor and the commissioners of that time as to be our founding fathers. And as I was flipping through the book, I actually found that Newton Shepherd was not, in fact, elected in 1882. He was elected in 1881, and he didn't just serve for one term. That's his 1882 minutes for the swearing in, and also in 1883. So he served 3 times. Newton Shepherd's first and only African-American commissioner on the board of aldermen, believe it or not, was first elected in 1881 when A.T. Summey won his 4th consecutive term as a mayor. And in 1882, Newton Shepherd was reelected and joined on the board by newly elected Mayor V.S. Lusk. And then in 1883, managed the three-peat and served eventually with 2 mayors and 8 fellow commissioners during his years of service. On his 3rd meeting, in his 3rd term of office, this is what the minutes said, on a motion, it was ordered that the police force for the ensuing year shall consist of 1 marshal, who shall be ex officio tax collector, 1 chief of police, and 2 policemen, one of whom may be a colored man. The following named officers were then duly elected by ballot. A.H. Baird was elected as marshal. H.S. Harkins elected chief of police with a salary of $500 per annum in fees. John A. Brookshire and Henry Saxon elected policemen with salaries of $450 each per annum and fees. So this shows that both the officers, black and white, were paid equally at this time. This all happened in 1883, that year that's emblazoned on our building and that seal in front of you. And it kind of, I think, definitively marks the high water mark of black political achievement in the 19th century. It's a little bit bittersweet to bring this to your attention. I'm glad that we can celebrate 3 years of Newton Shepherd's service rather than 1. But if this was the high water mark, then what happened after that? And 50 years later, in the early 30s, there's an exodus of the black population here. So why that happened can be found in those 50 years, and I look forward to telling you more about that. Over the years, I was all prepared to talk about the Reed-Howell Act of 1931. Don't worry, again, it's on its way. And thank you so much, Maggie, for letting us take a look at that this evening, and I'll see you guys next time.
Good work on the timing. Okay, and the research. Pat Irwin.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Patrick Irwin, and I reside in Montford. I've been a resident of Buncombe County over 20 years, and have lived in Asheville over 9 years. I'm coming to you this evening to express some concerns, and those of many other Montford residents, about the recent efforts of Plugged-In Productions to achieve authorization to hold amplified musical events at the Hazel Robinson Amphitheater. Plugged-In Productions, which some of you may remember, was permitted to produce live concerts at the amphitheater in 2021 and were denied authorization to hold them in 2022. If I may offer for the council's consideration and staff the following 4 primary concerns that have surfaced among many Montford residents impacted by the Plugged-In Productions events in the past. Number 1, these concerts have proven to significantly disrupt the lives and enjoyment of homes due to amplified sound volumes and thunderous crowd noise. 2, these concerts have caused physical and aesthetic damage to residents living close to the theater, including trash debris, parking abuse, fire and emergency access issues, and obtrusive crowd arrival and departure behavior. 3, if Plugged In Productions is authorized to commercially exploit Hazel Robinson, will it set a precedent in allowing this to happen anywhere within city property? 4th, the Hazel Robinson Theater was created to promote and enhance the works of Shakespeare and other like plays in a physical setting that considered the community that surrounded it, and in turn, the community has embraced. To allow live future concerts with amplified music like the Plugged In Productions would destroy the bond for all. Personally, living close to the theater, we have experienced parked cars that blocked our driveways, had made ruts in our lawns, verbally assaulted by concert attendees who either had thrown trash on our property or had been asked to move their cars, experienced rowdy and loud behavior from after-concert goers who lingered in the area well past 11 o'clock. In contrast, we have experienced none of that over these years, those type of behaviors from people who attend the performances of the Montford Players. Thank you.
Thank you. Roy Harris.
Mayor, City Council, 40 years ago, I arrived in Asheville. Almost 40 years, 2 weeks from now, in February. Since that time, I've been around, served on committees, served on boards, and those kinds of things. I got to thinking today, did I make a difference? Did anything change? And I walked downtown today, and everybody I met was sort of giving a negative, what's happening now, and it had, to tell you the truth, it had a lot to do around the water outage thing. And so I'm thinking, as I go forward, what's going to happen? I'm on the Reparation Committee, so I will have some influence on what happens there and everything. My 2 daughters graduated from Asheville High and has done well. I'm very proud of them. Of course, I don't think they're coming back home, but they've done well. So as we go forward, I would like to say, be careful who you put on boards. They might be around 40 years later. One of my mentors was a former city council person. We called him affectionately Watt Daddy, Herbert Watts. Herbert Watts gave me a call one day, and he said, would you consider being on the Water Authority? I'm like, what's the Water Authority? He said, you come to meetings, you go to that. So I was elected to the Water Authority. Being on the Water Authority, I'm like, oh, that subject is coming back up again, the outage and everything. And in fact, I saw Mr. Melton today, and I said, did I do something wrong back then? But he said, no. So thank you for allowing me to serve this community. And when I came and started to serve this community, I came off the streets. So I noticed the person was talking a few minutes ago how we put people on boards and everything. Put everybody. Consider everybody, because everybody has a voice in it. Just as a young lady was talking about the Hillcrest, the cameras and everything. Everybody deserves a chance to serve their city. So don't necessarily because they have titles and all of those kinds of things, but consider it. As I go forward, and as I go to my seat, I hope to be able to have recommendations for the Reparation Committee. I hope that we improve the Asheville City School System, even though it did well for me. I hope that those kinds of things. Oh, by the way, in the process of remodeling my house, and it's going to cost me probably as much as it originally cost to remodel it. And where I live at, I'm debating now, I live between the River Arc District and the South Slope. I'm trying to figure out whether my house is moving which way. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Nina Tovish.
Hello again. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I just wanted to give you a brief update about what's happening with the Boards and Commissions Working Group that is still trying to make itself useful both to the people of Asheville and to city staff and government. We have just initiated a process of reaching out one last time to people who have served on boards and commissions over the last decade to ask them to please take our survey. I'd like to say at the outset that our survey was a group effort. It could undoubtedly be improved, and no doubt future iterations will be better instrument. But I think despite the flaws that it may have, it will provide useful information for the consideration of our working group, but also after some analysis and consideration, it will help us offer some thoughts about how we can go forward with realigning working boards and commissions. We have a subcommittee forming to look at the statistics and help sort them in ways that will give us useful information upon which to make suggestions about whether we need more specific information from certain subgroups, whether we need to reach out to people who we're not able to reach, whether it's time to ask for the input of city staff. That is all going to be forthcoming. The good news for us is that we are going to be closing the survey at the end of this month, so we should have our first round of pretty rich material. We got a pretty good return for this kind of survey. We should have at least some preliminary analysis to bring to you, to city staff, and to the public in February. Just wanted to let you know that that's an ongoing process. We're grateful for the cooperation and support we've had from the city. We look forward to further collaboration and to the development of constructive next steps. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so I have David Moritz signed up to speak, and Andrea Carver, raise your hand, and Jared Wheatley, and Michael Segura. Okay. Have then yielded their time to David Moritz, who can have up to 10 minutes.
City Council, thank you very much for this time to speak. And my name is David Moritz. I'm an advocate for denser housing in the city of Asheville. And I'm here to talk about homelessness as it relates to housing. A book has had a big impact on me, on my thinking. It's called Homelessness is a Housing Problem. And what this book does, the report is great. I applaud you for having this done. I think it's amazing that we're working on this effort on homelessness, both for the people that suffer homelessness, as well as, the city itself. One thing it doesn't address is why do some cities have more homeless than others? And that's something this book covers. Before I start with the book, I'd like to say that, for example, some of the data in here, it says that Asheville has 1/3 unsheltered homeless, according to the point-in-time count last year. And it says that it's similar to the national average. However, the data is it varies significantly. New York City unsheltered homeless represents 4% of homelessness. In fact, and Los Angeles unsheltered homelessness is 75%. So there's a huge variance, because in this presentation, it makes it seem like we're sort of average, but there's a huge difference. And the reason is that New York City has 111,000 shelter beds. Los Angeles only has 11,000 shelter beds. And they have roughly similar number of homeless. And this is consistent throughout the East Coast and Midwest, where the response to homelessness is a robust shelter system. Whereas on the West Coast, they have not built a robust shelter system. That's why we see so many unsheltered homeless, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles. I mean, Los Angeles only has 11,000 shelter beds. So I think that data is important when we review this document, because I think adding shelters is very important, especially I don't think sweeps are something we should do if there's nowhere for people to go. And so the first thing we need to do is provide the shelters for people to go. Secondly, in this report, very important, but it's sort of buried on page 43, it says the Alliance recommends significant increases in the investment of permanent housing solutions, including continued housing development and rental subsidies. Significant increases. And so that's what I'm here for, to talk about this book, Homelessness is a Housing Problem. It's written by a professor from the University of Washington, and he focuses on homelessness. And obviously Seattle is a big homeless area. And he wrote this with a data scientist called Clayton Aldern, so it's very data-driven. The conclusion is obviously that homelessness is a housing problem. And it attempts to explain the variance in homelessness between cities. So San Francisco and Seattle have 10 homeless per 1,000. Charlotte only has 1.4 per 1,000. But in fact, Charlotte has grown by 29% from 2007 to 2019, while Seattle's only grown 21%. So Charlotte has actually grown faster than Seattle. But Charlotte, because of a relatively robust housing supply response, the city has not faced the housing shortages that plague many coastal cities. So let's take a step back. What are the factors that cause homelessness, which this report doesn't really cover? So the first one people really talk about a lot are personal factors. Well, it turns out based on the data, personal factors are not correlated with differences in homelessness from different cities. And I quote, "We investigate numerous and popular individual explanations for homelessness. In a strikingly consistent fashion, none of these explanations, poverty, unemployment, mental illness, drug use, and race, explains regional variations in homelessness. In fact, regions with high rates of poverty and unemployment, like Detroit, Cleveland, and Baltimore, have some of the lowest per capita homelessness in the country." So individual factors can precipitate homelessness, but it's more the city itself that contributes to the environment that causes homelessness. So what two factors make a big difference between cities and homelessness? Turns out vacancy rate and rental cost are the only two variables that explain differences in homelessness between cities. Regarding vacancy rate, scholars have repeatedly identified a natural vacancy for rental housing between 4% and 5%. Below that, it's an incredible stress on the market. San Francisco has 3.5% market rental vacancy, and they indicate in the book it's in dire need of additional rental units. So what causes low rent vacancy? So some people blame growth. So growth is often blamed as its own, that causes increased rent and vacancy. But however, many cities that grow don't have a homelessness problem. Local jurisdictions tend to be eager to bring new jobs to a community, like we're trying to do, but they take a laissez-faire approach to housing these employees. In this manner, the homelessness can thrive amid affluence. Population growth, high wages, and robust economy are generally considered markers of a successful city. Cities are incentivized politically to pursue an economic agenda that without a significant response in housing supply spurs housing instability and homelessness. So high growth on its own doesn't cause homelessness. However, it can. Boston, Seattle, and San Francisco are marked by high population growth and low supply elasticities, so low supply of housing. A dangerous combination for renters. The logical outcomes are housing markets with high rents, low vacancies. These locations also see high rates of homelessness. Charlotte, San Antonio, Dallas, Austin see population growth similar to Seattle and San Francisco. But what sets them apart from their coastal peers is a robust supply response. This helps explain why the robust growth in Charlotte has not produced the harsh housing market conditions that exist in growing metros like San Francisco and Seattle. Why do these factors persist? They explain two main factors drive a community's supply response to housing. Geographic attributes, such as mountains, water, and local regulatory environment. Changes to supply, because geography tends to be fixed, like San Francisco, changes to supply response are often solely a function of the regulatory environment. Most growth must be accommodated by the small minority of parcels that permit multifamily housing, but zoning isn't the only regulatory impediment to greater housing development. A frequently complex regulatory approval process also explains why construction is difficult to pursue, even where it's legally permitted. There's a phrase they coined, home voter hypothesis, which explains the way homeowners oppose new residential development. Baby boomers have enjoyed soaring home values by preventing the construction of new housing in their communities. Common boogeymen, this is from the book, I'm quoting. Common boogeymen deployed to oppose apartments include congestion, inadequate infrastructure, crowded schools, and changes to neighborhood character. Note, the character argument often drove the active, publicly buoyed racial segregation of US cities. This is a quote from the book. So I'm trying to, just provide the data from the book to give some added weight to this report, because I think it's important that we address the root cause that is causing the homelessness, not just trying to do what's in the things in the book. But here's the conclusion of the book. The point is that the housing market as a whole helps create the conditions in which homelessness varies from region to region. It's not merely a shortage of low-income housing. It's an overall housing shortage that matters. Tight housing conditions persist throughout the income spectrum, and therefore boosting production of housing at all levels will relieve some of the pressure in these tight, expensive housing markets. And I think it's important that we consider the root cause of homelessness. I think it's important that we bandage the problem that we have now, which I think one of the main recommendations is to build more shelters, which has been proven in New York City to work. In fact, New York City has a legal right to shelter, and that's why they built so many shelters. And also, there have been claims like weather makes a difference, but the actual root cause of it is not enough shelter. So I think it's important that we address the wound now, but I also think that we need to address the root cause, which is we're in a town that has mountains and a lot of boundaries. And when people oppose projects, sometimes they'll weaponize environmental concerns to try to stop a project in the city of Asheville. And then what happens, the project goes to the county. In fact, there was one just approved, 500 units on 100 acres of land. You could build 500 units on 1 acre in the city. 500 acres in the county. They go to the county because the approval process is streamlined. Land is big, they can do surface parking, and it creates a lot more environmental degradation in the county than it would here. So I just wanted to share it because I'm passionate about this book. I think it has a lot of data, and I hope that it becomes part of the discussion tomorrow, which I'll join, and I'm happy to participate any way I can.
And
thank you.
That was a good primer for our meeting tomorrow, and comports with what we're reading in the report. So speaking of which, that was our last speaker signed up for public comment. We do have a joint City Council County Commission meeting tomorrow over at Harris Cherokee to hear the report from the Alliance to End Homelessness, the National Alliance to End Homelessness. So that will be our focus for tomorrow, and it will be several hours long and do a deep dive into more of what you just heard in 10 minutes. And so I'm looking forward to that. I know all of you are. We have a closed session motion. It looks like you've got the motion in front of you.
Sure do. I move that the City of Asheville go into closed session for the following reasons. 1, to prevent disclosure of information that is privileged and confidential pursuant to the laws of North Carolina or not considered a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes. The statutory authorization is contained in NC General Statutes 143-318.11A1. The law that makes the information privileged and confidential in North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.10E. 2, to consult with an attorney employed by the city about matters with respect to which the attorney-client privilege between the city and the attorney must be preserved, including, but not limited to, the handling of settlement of a claim regarding the following: City of Asheville versus Arthur F. Jenkins, having a case file number of 16-CVS-2677. The statutory authorization is contained in North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3.
Rolls off the tongue. doesn't it?
Really?
That's a motion. Do we have a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and we will adjourn from the closed session. There you go.